Hello and welcome everybody to the live at Inside IIM. With me today, I have four women from four different domains who are going to talk about the kind of experiences they've had so far in their corporate career as a woman. Lots of things you can expect out of this live. But before we dive in, I want to point out that this is part of the Inside IIM's Women's Month. It's a campaign called She Inspires Me that we've launched. And the idea is to bring up female voices. You know, movies and media usually bring out half the story. The investment banker is almost always a man. But there are a lot of women working in the corporations, adding tremendous value. And we thought it was high time to bring out their stories, their experiences, and their learnings for you all. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Ocean, and I take pleasure in welcoming the four women we have with us. Thank you so much for taking the time, ladies. And I want to start with Ankita. Please introduce yourself, your background, experience, achievements in the corporations with the audience.
Thanks, Ocean. Hi, everyone. I'm Ankita. I've been a part of the events and experiential industry for about 8 years now. I'm a team lead at a leading corporation back in Bombay. And as a part of my experience, I've had the opportunity to work with Indian and international brands over the last 8 years across the space of lifestyle and corporate events. And very excited to be a part of this panel. Thank you so much for having me here. Over to you, Anusha.
So hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Anusha. I am currently working with Titan in the fragrances and accessories division. I lead the pan-India e-commerce business for them. Prior to this, I was working with the jewelry division. I was in Delhi handling 5 or 6 large format stores and running their sales and business for them. So I am a TAS manager from the batch of 2016, and I did my MBA from IIM Kozhikode. So I've been working with Titan for the past 6 years. So probably for the first 3 years, I was in the offline channel managing Tanishq stores and a lot of people management, business drive and all of that. And now it's completely transitioned to the online channel where I handle e-commerce build. So all in all, I've been in the sales field and handling online and offline together.
Okay, thank you, Anusha. Hi, everyone. My name is Harshita, a through and through HR professional, 13 years now. Have worked in a number of organizations from FMCG to IT to today in a SaaS product organization. Only done HR roles, be it as a business partner or a COE. That's been the split of my experience. The biggest achievement, I would say, of my career has been to really work with a number of great leaders and a number of great mentors. Being in HR, I have had the opportunity to interact with a number of people, work with them on business problems. And I think that's the achievement of my 13 years of experience. Extremely excited to be with Inside. I am always in awe of the kind of stuff you folks do. So very happy to be here. Over to you, Tanya.
Thank you, Harshita. Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya. Well, I come from a very typical educational background. I did my graduation in commerce from Sydenham College, then did my MBA from XLRI in finance and marketing. After that, I joined Citi. I was a banker for over 9.5 years. Post that, I moved to PayPal, where I used to manage payment partnerships. So been a through and through payments and banking professional. Currently, I lead online and omni-channel business for Pine Labs, which is a market leader for point of sale solutions, services for merchants. So very excited to be here.
Thank you so much, ladies. It's a privilege to have you. 4 women, different backgrounds, very excited. Let's dive in. I want to talk to you about your experience in the corporations as a woman. Do you think that being a working professional in the Indian society for a woman is exactly the same as it is for a man in a similar role? And I want to start with Anusha, and you could all take a shot at it afterwards.
Okay, so I would call myself a very recent corporate joiner. So if you ask me if it is same for me and my counterpart who's a male member of the community, maybe not till now. Now, I've been recently married, and when I start to think about the next phase of my life, when I start to think about family, maybe that's when I think I'll start taking calculated actions there. Why I would say is I think companies these days are still in more of a transitional phase and not there when it comes to benefiting women in terms of maternity options. While that could be a hindrance for women, I see that as I see that as a phase that will pull women down even now, and not so much for men. There's no paternity break even now in most of the companies in India. While I see that across Europe and US to some extent, I don't see that happening in India. It's still in a transition phase. Maybe some companies are adopting it, but not to a large extent. So when I start thinking about future, like maybe for the next 5 or 6 months, then that difference is coming out to be evident for me. Maybe not so far, but for the next couple of years, I see there's going to be some difference. And I'll take a very calculated step when it comes to that. And I don't have the freedom or liberty to really take the action that I would want, not considering this constraint, you know. So that is coming out to be evident in my mind when you ask this question.
Right. Thank you for your answer, Anusha. I want to keep the floor open if any of you has any thoughts on this question, the difference between a man and a woman working in a similar corporate role.
I'll maybe share a couple of my views on this, Oshin. I think the fact that we live in a society and the organization sort of is part of that society. So our organizations are microcosm of our society. So some of the patterns that would exist in a society, we are the same people who walk into an office and work, right? It is going to get carried on there. The biases or the narratives around people are getting to get carried on in the organizations. The reason that we are having a panel discussion like this today is evident of the fact that there is a difference, right? And there are social roles that we play which bring in a lot of constraints to our roles even in the workspace. But the good part today is that I think organizations have really realized that there is no going without diversity, and specifically, if I may say, women, right? Women are an integral part of everything we do. You do manufacturing, you do sales. There's so many outstanding women on the panel today doing such different jobs, right? So organizations do need that talent. And I think the biggest thing has been there has been a very positive movement towards this. There is a difference, but the fact is that today that difference has been realized, and there's a lot of positive movement towards that. And it's each one of our responsibilities sort of add to that movement and make sure that that difference reduces. To Anusha's point, if there are policies, practices, or unconscious biases which are working behind to make her feel a little different, or over the 2 years make feel different, that's what organizations are working towards. So yes, there is a difference because it's a societal pattern we live in. But in an organization, the tryst is to make that difference smaller. That's what I would add.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to what Harshita says, right? So there is no, I don't think there's a difference by domain or role really. So it's not like, okay, I have a different experience because I'm in finance, or Harshita has a different experience because she's in HR. There's obviously a gap between the number of women working in finance and technology versus men. And there's of course enough research to suggest that, you can improve performance with just bridging that gap, obviously skill and will being at par. So that aside, I think the biggest difference, and why I want to talk about it, is especially during the pandemic. I have seen, specific differences between the way, a job has been approached for a man versus a woman. And I believe that there has been a bigger adverse impact for women on a greater scale than their male counterparts during the pandemic. And that's again, specifically with the way maybe housework has been managed traditionally in India as well. So the consequences of that strain will, of course, play out over years to come. But it also means that a lot of women's jobs are going to be more vulnerable because of this crisis than men's jobs. So there are things that organizations need to control and take care of now, if they were to ensure that this difference doesn't sustain, or rather doesn't grow by virtue of this pandemic. So that's the only call out that I want to make, and where I feel like differences are growing thanks to the pandemic.
I think some really great points put forth by the panel here. Just adding on to a couple of things that Harshita spoke about, I do actually believe that biases still do exist to a certain extent. And it, of course, comes from many years of conditioning, right? And it's existed over the years. So I do feel that there's been progress that's happened. So the area of work that I basically come from is extensively outdoors. an experiential space. So we spend a lot of time outdoors trying to get a client's vision of an event, etc., live on ground. So biases have existed around this for women with regards to the fact that, women being a part of the production team, for example, is something that's not really looked at greatly, because possibly for women to be outdoors is something that's not possible for a longer stretch of time and is not sustainable eventually. So those kind of biases have existed, but over a period of time, I've personally seen that transition happen. It will take its due course of time, but I do also feel that men are also these days making equal efforts in trying to change that conditioning. And it's also something that organizations are proactively driving. So I do feel that there's a mix and match of both, but yes, there has been an evident progress over a period of time, at least in my area of work.
Thanks so much for that answer, all of you. I want to move to the next question, which really talks about, and it stems from the points that all of you raised. Feminists often speak of something called the mental load. It's a term for the invisible labor that's involved in managing a household and a family, and it typically most likely falls on the women's shoulders. Mental load is not about the physical tasks. It's not about helping a woman with the chores. It's actually about having all those chores in mind, having the to-do list, the planning, the organization. What do I need to do next to make sure that my family is happy and is going well? And so that remembering of task and that delegating of task, if you look at it, it's a full-time job. Planners get paid to do it. But women, when they work, especially Indian women, they manage the mental load of the household. They manage the mental load of whatever role they're doing, and yet they manage to a lot of times excel both professionally and at home. My question to you is, having that experience in the corporate so far, how do you think women professionals deal with all that kinds of mental load? How does it impact their work, their life, and their peace of mind? And I want to start with Tanya, and I'd ask all of you to join in then.
Absolutely. And that, kind of brings me back to the point I was raising earlier, that mental load actually has, I think, duplicated or tripled since, the pandemic has started, because you are basically managing work and home from home, which was never the case earlier. So that unfortunately has meant for women and men also, to a certain extent, working at unearthly hours, completing household chores post work, and seriously denting your peace of mind, right? So I know that a lot of women professionals have extremely supportive families who share this load at home, including mine. So, you're able to carry on work as usual. So to give you an example, if I have a toddler at home, managing my child's school work needs to be an end-to-end responsibility, and not just, say, supervising an online class, for instance. So as long as, you have support from home to make sure that some of that is end-to-end taken care of, that freedom, once you get, only then you will be able to give enough justice to your job in the meanwhile. Unfortunately, for those who don't, the impact usually is on the job itself. So that's really where I'm coming from. And I feel like not enough, if we don't do enough about it now, the repercussions of it, of course, come down to lesser women continuing to remain on the job, even post the pandemic.
And before we move on, I also want to point out that if we look at the data, in fact, this was a report by McKinsey which showed that when you look at the starting positions, fresher roles, you find greater number of men and women. There's more equality. But as the levels rise up, when you go to the CXO level, finally, the disparity is the highest. And I think that goes back to Anusha's point and Tanya's point about having these decisions about family that's the stage where you have those decisions, and that's what the numbers say too. I want to take your view on this. How do you think women professionals manage this load? How does it impact them? What's the consequence?
So just to add here, Oshin, adding to what Tanya said, I think women are one of those who need that kind of support to be able to carry on work very well. And to be honest, I think the whole narrative we lived in is an assumed narrative. So in our mind, we assume it is our responsibility. In our mind, we assume we are the caretakers. We are supposed to do everything, right? And to your point, and I think it's a great question, is it only about getting support? Is it that we can pass on that responsibility and say it's not just my responsibility? Can we share responsibility, not just the load? I think we still share the load, but we're not ready to give up the responsibility. It's a little bit of our assumed narrative also to say, no, it is me, And the other thing which I also feel is this whole thing about, and I'm one of those who also talks about it a lot, is that this whole idea of being a superwoman. Yes, you're supposed to be a superwoman. It's very good. You can manage everything, and you're perfect and all of that. But let's not become caged by it. If we are caregivers, we should be as much care getters. We should train our mind to do that, because sometimes I think our mind stops us from doing it. I will, even if my husband's taking care of my child's study, I'll jump in to say, no, I'm the one who can do it perfectly. I'm the one who's responsible for it. Honestly, and it's difficult, it's not easy. I'm saying it a little more lightly, but it's extremely difficult, right? I'm a little less in that. I actually let go a lot of things, but it's very difficult. My idea is not just load, as you said, it's responsibility. Okay, let's be kind to ourselves. Why do we need to take burden for everything, right? Let's get care rather than giving it always. And a lot of it has to be even education to the people around us. See, they have lived in an assumed narrative of what we should do, what we shouldn't do, what we can do, what we couldn't do, right? Let's help them mature as we are maturing in terms of what we need to do. Ask for that support. One of the biggest things I always tell people, and I've tried also doing, and I play that role, right? I'm HR, so I'm the one, the policies and culture and all of that sits on my side, right? So one of the things I always say is, please come and ask us for that support. The organization actually may be blindsided to even know what they should be doing to an extent, right? So I think it's a lot of our responsibility to also do it. But first thing, let's just be kind to ourselves. Everything is not supposed to be our responsibility, right? And I think that just not the load sharing, but the mental makeup of it is important. So if my kid's not going to eat paratha today and going to eat Maggie, it's okay. Big deal. Nothing's going to happen. He'll eat the paratha tomorrow. Yeah? When his mom has time and mom doesn't have a presentation. So it's okay. It's about just letting go a little bit. But because we've lived in an assumed narrative, let's not forget the pattern we've lived in. It'll take a little bit of time. To Ankita's point, it's going to take time. But let's be at it. And let's also pass on these stories to other women so that they don't die under the load of the mental load. So that's what I would say.
Yeah,
Harshita, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Ankita.
I mean, Harshita, you've actually spoken a lot about things that I also wanted to actually touch upon. I think through this pandemic specifically, we've landed up putting so much pressure on ourselves, sometimes unwarranted pressure as well, because I think when you're not out there with a team or with your colleagues or people who are, because it's a shared energy, right? When you don't have that happening for you, there's a lot of self-pressure also that comes in, which not just reflects at work, but also reflects at home as well, right? So I, of course, I would not be the right person to comment on how mental load back in people's lives who actually have like families, etc. works, because I'm not in that space as yet. But I do actually feel that a lot of us need to start letting go, because we tend to over pressurize ourselves. And that just convolutes the entire idea of productivity. Like it doesn't have to be 24/7. And that's not really what's required of you. And a lot of organizations are also driving it in today's time over the pandemic. It's taken a few months because, of course, productivity versus actual results have been varying because, of course, there's a loss of business and stuff like that. But I think organizations have also been making a consistent effort towards ensuring that people are not over pressurizing themselves. Sorry, Anusha, you were saying something.
Yeah, so I mean, I think all of you have covered most of the things that I've been thinking about, but that's true. So whenever there is those to-do lists and things that I want to do, I would assume that's going to get over once that is checked or done on that particular day, in that particular week. But it's never ending. The mental load is just going to like increase day by day. There's no end to it, like with time and with months and with years, it's just going to keep adding up to you. So with what happens with that is there's going to be expectations from family, friends, whatever. It's going to keep building up. So I think as women, we have to consciously say when to say yes, when to say no, when to balance things. So that, I think that responsibility lies on us. And I don't think we should really expect someone to come and share it and probably sponsor for us there. But I think the responsibility lies with us when to like negotiate better and have things under our control. So I think it's a balance of both, having a good support system like Tanya said, as well as taking some accountability on our end to say no when it is not really actually on the priority list.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your answers. I think one of the things that females, women who are actually entering the workforce just now could learn from these women who've had a lot of experience is that you may want to take up a lot of responsibility starting now because perhaps it's your first big job after your MBA. And maybe it's a good thing because it shows initiative, but maybe it's also helpful to step back a little and reflect upon what kind of responsibilities are you taking, what out of it is necessary, what's unnecessary, and how is it affecting your mental health, how do you feel after work, during work. And with that point, I want to bring our discussion to your careers as professionals. I want to ask you, what challenges did you all personally face when you were working in your respective domains? Because we have 4 different domains, I think the answer to this question could shed light upon what kind of problems professionals in your domains face, and how do you go about dealing with those problems and ensuring that you keep driving your career forward to the next level.
I'll go first. I wouldn't call this an issue per se, but so how it works for people back in the space that I come from is the fact that there is this chalked out plan for you. So the media industry, at least when it kickstarted and over a period of time, has been male dominated in a lot of ways. Okay, and over a period of time, there have been women at positions of power that have come in and have taken charge of things, right? But what is also there to observe in this entire scheme of things is the fact that the kind of departments and the kind of work that has been chalked out for you is predefined. For example, what I was earlier talking about was the fact that the event space effectively has multiple departments. For example, a client servicing department, the production department, and so on, right? It's a given that women work best in the role of a client servicing executive and may not necessarily fit in the role of a production associate because you're required to be on ground and there's a lot of vendor negotiations, and the kind of expertise that you may have in that space is not necessarily what will work. And which is why it's predefined for you that client servicing and being the face to a client or a brand or the agency to the outside world is what has been set as a norm for women. So I do feel that there was a certain setup which was prearranged. But over a period of time, again, women have challenged these situations. And I have actually personally seen a transition of women into varied departments and areas of work as well, which I think is great to see in today's day and time. Because just as an example, when I kickstarted my career, at that point of time, of course, my understanding of the industry was also very limited. I just knew the areas that I extensively enjoyed, and I went in wanting to join in the production department. And that's when I was told that possibly my skill set, which I mean, of course, not entirely was evident to the person on the other side, but apparently my skill set would be something that would work for a client servicing team better. So that role was kind of chalked out for me. In the long run, it worked for me because that's the same space that I have been in and I've grown in. But I wonder if that's conditioning as well, where it's preset for you. So that's the kind of challenge that I've faced. And sorry, I won't take much of your time, but also to kind of add to this, another thing that I have observed is the minute that you put a woman in that position where you say, this is what is chalked out for you, it also creates a challenge to kind of prove your worth to the brand or to the client at the other side, that you are beyond just being a woman and you're somebody with innate talent and somebody who can bring a lot to the table beyond just being a woman who can talk to you or who has soft skills. So those are the kind of challenges and the kind of boundaries that we've had to break over a period of time. Of course, a lot has changed as well, and the transition is going to happen at a consistent level. But yeah, some of the challenges that I've faced.
So I'll go next. So in sales, at least, I would want to speak about how it has been for me. I started off with Tanishq. The first project that I had to do was the business expansion plan for Tanishq in Andhra and Telangana. So you might be aware that how tier 2 and tier 3 towns are like growing at a better rate in comparison to tier 1 and the metros. So my project was basically to identify which tier 2 or which tier 3 town should we open the next Tanishq outlet. So it involved me going to each of these cities that hardly I would not have even heard the names of those towns before this project. So I had to literally take the local buses or trains, go visit there and do do the market visits, benchmark it with the competitors, see how retail is doing there in that market. A lot of study had to be done physically, and there's something that always bothered me was safety. So that's always a challenge. That's always been a challenge. I still don't have an answer where how we can tackle that. I've had instances where people have followed me, and I've had some experiences there. I don't have it all figured out, but that's one challenge that women in sales will definitely face. Like all the friends who've been ASMs or ABMs in different FMCG or FMCD companies, their work is on the ground. It's very functional and it's a line role where they have to spend a lot of time in their territories, in their beat plan and in stores, and a lot of, you can't really say at 5 o'clock I have to go home, right? Work gets done at whatever time it gets done. So safety is something that's a huge challenge for women, at least in the sales role. You have to take all your precautions. You have to ensure that there's someone who's informed of your whereabouts. You keep constantly telling them that you're okay and all of that. And I don't have an answer for that yet, but that's how the role is. There is that inherent challenge involved in that role per se.
Thank you so much for that answer. I think it's also something to reflect about because oftentimes a lot of work involves travel. And especially when you have jobs, of course, in sales, it would require a lot of travel, I understand. Jobs like consulting, in fact, at the general management level, a lot of roles do require travel. And when you have women working in those roles, the concern about safety is always present. I mean, men don't when men roam late at night, they don't worry, am I going to get raped? That's a question that only comes to women, and that's exceedingly unfair. But it's also worth noting that it's a question that comes to women professionals too, not just when you're a girl and you're roaming on the streets. It could come to you when you're working as well. And that just, I think, goes on to reflect the seriousness of the issue at hand, the differences that men and women face at work. I want to go back to Tanya now and ask her what she thinks about the problem, and specifically what have been challenges personally for you as a woman in finance, as a banker.
Yeah, I mean, see, banking's obviously a very it's a very technical profile, right? So my challenge, honestly, has been to really get on the upkeep, get with my product, understand processes, get productive. So for me, the biggest challenge has been that to scale and get productive in a very short period of time, because banking, obviously, Citi, I did about 5 roles in Citi. So I started with retail banking. I did a bit of consumer cards and liabilities, then moved to investments, and then moved to corporate bank. And every of these, divisions have very different requirements in terms of product understanding and skill sets. And then I did product and sales. So the thing is, you don't really have much of a leeway to kind of say, yeah, I'll train myself in 6 months to a year and I'll get productive the next year, because that's pretty much not the speed that is expected of you. And if you are at that speed, you pretty much kind of saying bye-bye to, moving ahead. So, and that's something you have to accept, right? There are things where, you really can't control it because that's the pace of the organization. You joined it for the pace. So for me, the way I overcame it is, it's seriously a lot of hard work, a lot of iteration, pretty much being on the job a lot. But yeah, the fruits of it are quite sweet. So I think I was okay with it. And again, I'll stress back on the support that one gets at home in order to do that, in order to give that much time to your job, which if you didn't have, this would have just been a theoretical answer. I think the other piece, the other challenge, and that's again very personal to me, which I have overcome and I've tried to overcome, let me say that, is the ability to really put myself forward or assert myself. And there again, it's got to do with a lot of, a lot of times I think we try to achieve perfection a little more than what men try to do, and which results in, putting your own insecurities and fear that you don't know enough about it. And I won't talk about it till I've perfected my answer. In reality, actually, just having that confidence to say what you have is good enough to put yourself forward. So one of the biggest hurdles for me, and that's been a conscious attempt for me to change as well, is to say yes, I can do it when there's been a specific question that I didn't know enough about. And it really helps in it really matters a lot in fintech, because it's a very, very fast paced moving segment. It's highly dynamic. Regulations change, technologies change. So A, you have to be paranoid about it, and B, it's okay not to know all of it. So you can't know all of it, but yes, you need to say that you can do it. So I think that's been one of my biggest challenges, and I just overcome it by continuous iteration.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, please go ahead, Harshita.
so I belong to that function of an organization which will have the maximum number of women. So, I sort of belong to that. But to to that point, I think it's all about the skills and the competency one brings in. If you bring that, you can be a salesperson or an HR person. I've had some of my best bosses who are men. I've had bosses who didn't even have an HR background but did wonderfully well as HR heads, etc. So I think it's all about competencies and skills that you bring on the table that you can match to whichever job you want to do. As far as challenges are concerned, I think to HR, all of you would have been our clients at some point in time, and HR people must have come and spoken to you. So our biggest challenge is how do we convert the whole fuzzy area of training, OD, and all of that, and so business value, right? So our challenge will always be that. The first question someone will ask, okay, I'll sit for 8 hours training. What am I going to get as a business value? And you're like, okay, okay, I will figure out a model for you. So I think as HR, that's been our not a challenge, but also an opportunity, because I think today HR sits at a point where with analytics, with the kind of results we've been able to show just with the human interventions that we are able to do, whether you talk about coaching, you talk about mentoring, you talk about training, you talk about anything. I think today we've sort of reached a level where we are able to show that value, because the first question asked from us is, where is the value, right? We are the function who's like a cost center rather than being a money generator, right? So I think that's been the triest of an HR person. I think we've come a long way to be able to show that each step that we take adds value to your bottom line. I think we've created analytics, we've created models, and the sheer hard work that HR people have put into the whole space has been able to show its results now. And I think some of the fruits we eat because that's been happening for over a period of time. The second thing is, of course, HR is again one of those functions who handles the maximum number of stakeholders. So one of the areas that we've always sort of had to be at a slightly better competence is about the ability to handle stakeholders and influence. Can we do that better? Because we are going to handle the maximum number of stakeholders, right? So I think the challenges are always that intuitively in your mind, it's going to make sense to you, right? Logically, data, everything will say, but the person right in front of you may just not be able to perceive it and say it and see it in the way that you are seeing it. The value correlation that you can make, they may not be able to make it. So how is it that you're going to be able to influence and manage that stakeholder and say that it's worth your time to be part of this, right? And I think that's been our challenge and opportunity, and I think we've come a long way through that.
Thanks so much for that answer, Harshita. Before we move on to the next question, I just want to ask the other women on the panel, do you have further thoughts about the question? Anything else on your mind that you want to add before we move on?
We're good.
Okay,
Can I just add one thing, Oshin, if that's okay?
Sure.
So to Anusha's point, I think it's hats off to all the women who go out there and do sales. I've been in FMCGs. I think it's wonderful the job that they do with all the risks, all the society's narratives, assumptions around them. And I think as organizations, that's one of the areas where we have to really crack the code so that we can get more and more women out there in sales, because they're wonderful at what they do. And I think, again, I come from a very positive standpoint. Remember, I'm an HR person, can't help it. I think organizations done a lot in that space, but there's a huge amount of work that can be still done. And I think we just need to realize it and get it done.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Harshita.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for that answer. We have a question from our live audience. Priya is asking, does anyone on the panel feel that women empowerment is overrated?
Can I try?
Yeah.
Taking that? Yeah. I don't think so. It is because if you just go by data, right, the amount of women who enter education to a school, the amount who come to graduation, the amount who come to a post graduation, the number is very, very less, right? That's the representation of that population that we are trying to do. That's the population you're trying to get. There's only so many who are available, right? And to be able to give them the opportunity to come into the fore and be able to work, I don't think so it's overrated, because there's just so much to do, right? From women entering and not leaving the corporate world, right? So I personally feel it's not overrated. Sometimes there's just too much of hype around it. I get it, too much of talk, too much of hype, too many things coming on Women's Day. We get that, right? But it's not overrated because it's a long, long journey. From numbers to policies to culture to biases, it's a huge journey, right? So
I
that.
mean, I just want to add here that, I mean, women empowerment more than ever today, it cannot be overrated. So one is, you need to raise status of women, whether it is through education, whether it's through literacy, whether it's to giving opportunities, equal pay. I mean, there are so many aspects today where I can tell you it's not equal. So it's not overrated at all. It's highly, it needs to be talked more than ever before. And we should do all that we can in our own individual capacities, at least with women employees that work with us, work for us, work around us, to make sure that they're given those opportunities and call out if they're not. So I would definitely say it's not.
Yeah. So adding to Harshita's point on women entering that workforce, areas of improvement needed there itself is huge, I feel. So I mean, personally speaking, for me also doing an MBA, there was a lot of resistance. My family was not all gung-ho about it, saying, okay, go for it and all of that. There was a lot of resistance. There was a lot of convincing that was required. If I have to compare it with if I had a brother or a cousin who's a male member of the family, I don't think he would have gone through it, knowing my family and my relatives. I don't think he would have gone through that, but I had to do a lot of convincing, even for that first step that led me to the entire corporate world. So at the entry point itself, if there's so much resistance, be because of societal conditioning or whatever be the reasons, I think it will traverse through the entire journey that women take up in the corporate ladder and in their career. So at every stage there is inequality, like Tanya mentioned. So it's important to address them at every phase of the women's life. Maybe women who feel that the empowerment is overrated are that fortunate class of society who've not faced that. But a large chunk of the society faces that still, and it needs a lot of correction.
And at this point, we have another question. We have two more questions from our live audience. The first is from Webhav, and I want to personally thank all the men who are watching this, because I just hate to see men absent in the women empowerment kind of ideas. They're just absent usually. So thanks for watching and taking the time. And Webhav is asking, why are very few females at the top in corporate leadership positions? And he's not just talking about India, but also abroad. Do you guys think there's a specific reason for it?
And can any one of us take a go at that?
Sure, please. Yeah.
So I think yes, and I'll draw on from Anusha and Harshita's point. If you were to draw a working woman graph, right, from the time that one joins as an associate to a mid-level employee to C-suite, the funnel pretty much dries up at the top. So of course, yes, we bring in women at entry level, but growing and thriving them, we don't. And he's absolutely right. It's not just in India, but other places, other parts of the world as well. The biggest reason, if you ask me, which I have seen time and again in workplaces, is, I think once you have a family and biologically, it'll be you who will need to nurture for the first few years. You need to have a workplace which is extremely compassionate about it and finds a way for you to manage home for a while. So when I say that, I don't mean companies who give us a 6-month maternity break. No, that's not what I mean, because that's government policy now. it's important to give support to women so they get back after that break. And I think some of the companies that I have worked for or I've seen as well, for example, I know HUL does this great tie-up with, ensuring that women who come back from break have a daycare facility right in campus. I think that's brilliant. Or the second innings, program, I think, which the Tata Group has. So work from home to the extent possible, which of course now is like a moot point, but at least back in the day used to be very, very important for, women who had family back home and wanted to have that option. So I think till you don't have enough companies doing enough, this will always be a problem, because I do feel that at that mid-level employee status, it's when a lot of the funnel actually dries up. And one of the biggest reasons I believe is this.
Just to add to Tanya's point, I think, Tanya, the brilliant word that you used was compassionate. I think a compassionate workplace, not just policies and practices, but really compassion to allow women to sort of, transition back to work, give them all that support. And to add to that, Oshin, the other thing that can be there is again this thing that, okay, a woman's got married, she's had kids, it's done and dusted for her. She ain't going to be able to sustain it, right? It's a lot of thing which happens around us also, is just assumed, right? And sometimes you fall prey to that assumptions and you don't even try enough to say, okay, I'm going to break that off, or I'm going to ask for that help. There's a lot of unconscious bias even for that, and that also stops us from even in challenging it, right? So one is, of course, policies, practices, and all of that. But I think it's also about the environment. Are we having enough conversations? Are we having enough, getting people enough into this whole thing to say, listen, you have to really open up your mind, starting with our own self, that I'm going to challenge it myself, right? It's going to happen to me. If I'm going to feel that's happening to me, I'm going to raise it out, right? So I think that's really what happens. But yes, it's the middle funnel where we've seen women sort of go out of workplace, and it gets very difficult for them to sustain. So I think it's about giving the right policies, practices, compassion, and the environment, which is going to tell them, you don't have to give up. We're going to do everything to keep you there. Right? And I think that's what really happens.
And I think also adding to Harshita's point, that stems from the unconscious fear that women have, like, how am I going to handle so many responsibilities when I have so much to do at home, and I have to manage a larger team here with a promotion or a bigger responsibility. So having a system or an environment that assures that things will be supportive and will be taken care of, and the compassion bit of it that both Harshita and Tanya talked about, comes as a great support system. Because sometimes we as women also like think too much about it, overthink to a certain extent, that we kind of avoid such opportunities even when they present to ourselves, So that's something, again, women should take accountability for, while organizations drive things for us.
Oshin, I'm sorry, just last things occurred in which came to my mind. Being a mother myself, I think I've been guilt-stricken a lot of times, right? If I'm not able to spend that much time, I'll feel, oh, what the hell? How can work become more important, right? Uh, I think we just have to get out of that vicious circle of environment, bias, guilt, and really, just step out of it for once and see it from outside and say that it's not making sense. I have it in me and I need that support to move forward. I just wanted to sort of add that one.
And thank you for that answer. I also want to put up two more questions to you that the audience is asking. One is by Brinda, who's asking, is there gender pay gap in India? And I think she's trusting your experience to answer that question. Would you like, whoever wants to take it, please go ahead.
Okay, so let me try taking that. I've been in organizations where it isn't, right? So I've been fortunate to do that, but we can't shy away from the fact that there is gender pay gap, right? I think there is a lot of stride again, which has been made in that space. Can we say we are 100% okay? I don't think so. I think it's still a journey that is going on. But I think organizations are today conscious that they can't afford to have one, right? It's traditionally been there and people are overcoming that. And organizations know they can't afford to have it, because that talent will leave you if you're going to have that gap. There'll be someone else sitting and saying, come join me, because there's so much of talent that women bring in. So, it's not 100%, but organizations really have made a big stride. And to the earlier point, I forgot to mention that I was reading one report where India has the maximum number of women in the C-suite compared to a lot of other countries, right? So that's the half glass full for this.
And I'd like to pass this question. Have you seen gender pay gap in your experience, Ankita, Tanya, Anusha? If you could one by one just take it up quickly.
So, you know,
sorry.
No, Ankita, go ahead.
All right. To be very honest, I have actually seen this at certain levels, but again, I keep talking about how it's a constant transition from what it used to be to where it is right now, right? Because the kind of people, at least as far as the media industry is concerned, the kind of people at managerial levels have evolved over a period of time. There are more people who are voicing their opinions these days about, be it gender equality, be it pay gaps. There are more people consciously looking into that aspect of things as well, which is why I feel that over a period of time, it has changed. But of course, like Harshita said, that organizations also these days cannot afford to be in that position where people are consciously calling out such disparities. So yeah, it's existed, but it's getting better again. Sorry, Tanya, go ahead.
You know, I mean, I agree. I don't think any organization today can ever even claim anything like this, and nor would they be able to, I mean, unless you pull data and prove it otherwise. But so definitely people are working very hard to strive that parity, number one. But I'll tell you another thing why all of this happens as well. And I'll give you examples of where there are employees who, you know, simply decide to hike the salaries by, you know, giving a competitive offer. And I see more often than not, it's the men than the women who do that. It's that proportion of people who actually try and get to the next level and try and give a competitive bid so that you can get to the next level of price hike, for example. That happens a lot, by the way, in banking, I must tell you. And most of the times, you don't want to lose a talented guy or a girl, but most of the time it is the guy who's doing it and he ends up getting that hike, and then that, you know, disparity kind of begins to seep in. So organizations also need to make sure that, you know, when they're treating a employee because he's about to leave, he or she's about to leave, and giving him the hike, does not treat the others who are actually really loyal to the organization, are asking for a pay hike, treat them equally well. So some of these things I actually feel, and I used to keep cribbing about this to my bosses in banking, that, you know, look, I never go to another competitor bank and give you an offer, but so you just give me like a 10% hike, and I know this guy went there and got a 40% hike, and like that used to hurt me a lot. So obviously that takes time, but like people need to acknowledge it and they need to work on it really quickly, because I see this happening a lot in banking. So yeah, that would be my 2 bits on gender pay and parity.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Anusha, you could just
So yeah, so I have not faced myself a gender pay difference in the companies that I worked for. But Tanya's point on the negotiation bit, when a male member of the team negotiates better, that applies even at the recruitment stage. You know, even when a fresher for that matter is getting recruited, you can see a guy negotiating the salary with no experience, but a girl accepting the salary or the offer that's made on the table. So the negotiation starts there. Like, I mean, it boils down to the discussions we've had a few minutes back as to how men are more confident even when they are unprepared, and women shy away from that, you know. So it's not going to do any harm in asking, right? So we shy away from that as well. So it's at both the stages, at the recruitment, at the start of the funnel, as well as at the end of the funnel, you know, where the difference could make it big in the career.
Thanks so much for that answer. Yeah, please.
Sorry, just to add to Tanya's point about how negotiations, like at least in your space, you've observed it being done more by men. This is also something that consistently happens at our space as well. But I do not want, I mean, I personally wouldn't make this about gender, because I think it's more about what you feel your market value is, and it could actually be done by men and women alike. So what I have personally observed in the past and guilty as charged have personally also participated in is, of course, when there are times when you also realize that your market value is relatively higher than the kind of pay that's being currently offered to you. There are other agencies as well that kind of reach out to you, and it's a common practice because that's the only way you kind of tend to evaluate your talent and your skill set and what you are bringing to the table, right? And I don't think, at least as far as I'm considered, this would be about gender. It would rather be about like not unequal pay. That's about it. I mean, it wouldn't be about gender for me, at least.
Thanks for that answer. Ankita, the next question I want to ask you guys is from Swasti, who's asking, how does one know if they're the right fit for the corporate sector? I want to ask Anusha, do you want to take that question up?
Sure. So I can talk from sales point of view. See, you'll never know, okay? But for me, in my personal experience, I had a very different opinion about what sales was going to be. I thought if I have my metrics done, I'm going to be a star performer. But what happened in reality was completely different. It was hell lot of people management, stakeholder management, traveling, all of that I had not even accounted in my head. My ultimate idea of success in sales was achieving the targets and being the star member of the team. So you'll not know unless you try it out, right? Like, it's very difficult to tell you that okay, this is what is going to happen. If you're ready for this, then you're okay for the corporate role, because certain things you would not have experienced at all. For example, a lot of theoretical stuff, distribution, sales, and all of that, I've studied and I know about it, but no one taught me what people management was or stakeholder management was. I had to learn it on the job and decide for myself if I'm made for it or not, or if I'm comfortable doing it or not, or if I see myself growing in it or not. So certain things there, I think you have to experience to really understand if you're made for it, and if you want to take it up as a future career option. So I would not say, I don't think there's a ready-made answer saying if ABC is there, then you're cut out for that role. And I don't think you can answer that for any role for that matter. For sales, definitely not.
Okay. And please go on, Ankita.
So just kind of adding on to Anusha's bit, I do agree that there is no real manual of how a corporate world is going to take you in or how you're going to be there. But I just feel that there are, I mean, of course, work experience is something that you are going to learn from over a period of time, and you need to really be open about the fact that when you enter that space, it's highly likely that you will not get things right, and you will not definitely get it right for a period of time. But I think patience is the key. That's one. Soft skills is something that nobody can really teach you. It's, of course, something that comes from within. And at least in my area of work, soft skills is something that people come in with, and that's exactly what you notice in people, and you identify what they are kind of cut out for, right? And the rest of it, just roll with the ball, just keep taking things in as and when, I think. Yeah.
And I want to quickly pass this question on to Tanya and Harshita both, because I think where you're coming from, it'll add value to the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you there is no rule book either. So I started banking with MBA in marketing and finance, and believe me, the work that I did had nothing to do with what I studied. So all you need to have is readiness to learn, and you really need to be ready to learn. So you're not going to know it on day one. And yeah, you will know it slightly by day 90, and you would have probably perfected it by day 180. But you need to persist. So there is really no there is really no shortcut to it. It's just time, and over a period of time you will see that you're going to get better at it. Yes, I would also, for anyone who's joining a new organization or joining a new field, it's important to read up on it. So all I would say is at least have an idea of what you're going into. So if you're getting into, I mean, let's say you're joining e-commerce, or you're joining what Anusha does, it's important to know what the company does, how you can add value to the company, what is it that they're selling. I mean, those are the things that you need to prep yourself for at minimum, and the rest I'm sure you'll pick up on the job. But I can't stress enough on the need to prepare oneself. So while you may not know it all, at least, I mean, you have the power of the internet, right? Get onto it and at least know what the company does at minimum.
Definitely.
Yeah, you just need to keep the curiosity going, I think, at all points of time. And that
Yeah.
shouldn't die out eventually. Yeah.
I think this is a really important point, because when we're growing up, what we're told is that just make it to a top tier college and you're set for life. And it seems that doesn't work, that mindset.
That really doesn't, no.
Okay, and I have a question from Parag, who's asking, how can a person who has done bachelor's in statistics make a career in HR? And Harshita, this is your place. Please go on.
Okay, so Parag, just to give you an idea, I'm a science student, a history graduate, postgraduate, and an HR professional. So I think HR, I'm an HR professional, but I'm going to say it loud, is common sense. Okay, can you work with people? Can you understand people? Do you have the patience to go through with them and sort of solve a problem? Right? Can you act as a conscious keeper? Can you be a guide to a leader? That's pretty much what we do, right? There's a lot of science and analytics and everything behind that. I love my craft. I've always loved what I do. So if you want to do something, and that's to the earlier question also, Oshit, if you have the passion to do something, if you love your craft, you'll go through it and you'll make it there, right? You'll not leave it. So there's going to be capability that you need to bring in by preparation. There's going to be networking you should do to learn more about it. You should go out and ask questions from people when you're joining an organization. To be honest, 13 years back when I started working, we would hesitate in picking up a phone and asking someone a question, but that's not there anymore. I think just go be in an organization, go ask question. As far as HR is concerned, I am a big believer of experience, right? Gain any experience that will help you understand about HR, learn about HR, however small or big it may be. Reach out to people who are in that field. So tomorrow, if you were to reach out to me and ask me, what does it take to be an HR professional? What's been your experience? What's been the good and the bad and all of that? It'll add value to your outlook towards that piece. With that, I'm always someone who says get more and more education about it, right? So if you are interested in doing a postgrad, go ahead and do that, because education prepares you better, right? So, and in my class, I can tell you, when I did it in TIS about 13 years back, we had doctors, we had people from history background, we had all sorts of people, right? We had engineers, right? So it's just about, what do you like doing? Can you prepare enough for it? Are you going to love your class? If that's your space, you're going to make it there, right? You're going to push through every obstacle that's available and you're going to make it, right? So I would suggest, if you're interested in HR, if you want to do a postgraduate, please go ahead and do it. Do it from a good college. It will get you the first stepping stone of working in a good organization. If you're not wanting to do right now study, just go ahead and get some experience in HR, even if it's a small experience. Add to your kitty of experiences. Reach out to people who can tell you more about it. And HR is one space which encompasses a lot in itself, right? It has a space for a lot of people, whether you want like data, whether you're a thought leader, whether you're a lot of things, right? So it's one space where everybody can enter with the right preparation and right knowledge, is what I would say.
And at this point, I want to share with the audience that Inside IIM has a specific product called Counsel that exactly does just that for you. You have mentors who are willing and happy to guide you on your journey. And Tanya and Harshita are both helping us mentor a lot of students based on their experience in their domains. If this is something you're looking at, and we're confident this will sort of spearhead your career, it'll boost you, because you have the information that a lot of the folks your age would not about the field. Through your mentor. Please do check it out on our website. It's called Counsel and it starts with a K. That's the catch. The next question we have is from Mihir, and this is the final question from the audience just now. After that, I'll move to concluding the webinar. His question is that working as a production engineer in one of the top chemical companies for 3 years now, he hasn't seen any woman in this kind of a role, particularly in manufacturing industries. So he's asking, what is your view about this?
Okay. So let me try taking a shot at it. Yes, there are very less women, specifically from the background that has been spoken, that sort of may exist in that space. Again, we've been discussing how many women really enter the education space. So you can look at an engineering class and you know how many less women anyways are there in engineering classes. So I think the whole point starts from there. And then there is an understanding of certain professions which are said that only men will thrive better, they can do better over there. So I think that's the starting point which stops women from entering some of the professions. And I think that's where we've had a lesser amount of women in those positions or higher positions, etc. So I think it again starts from what we are associated to do. And I think sometimes it just assumes what women can do, cannot do, and we do that. And I think it starts really from there, just the assumption that we wouldn't be able to do that job or wouldn't do that job better stops us from even entering that. So I think that's where the pipeline itself becomes dry.
Yeah, I just want to say that it's no different from women in tech, right? Of course, now that number is ballooning up, thankfully, but that was the case with women in tech as well. It was predominantly a male-dominated industry, and thankfully, I'm part of the fintech world, of which tech is also a part of fintech. So, I think again, it has taken time to reach there. And it will take that time for manufacturing as well to reach a certain level of maturity where you will have enough women participation. The question is, are enough companies doing enough about it? Like, I know fintech firms and technology firms do a lot to get more women talent into the organization and to get them to stay. So that the onus relies even on companies and people at positions of power in manufacturing. So I would think that's again something which is in the hands of people controlling that sector.
And I think your point goes, it's quite similar. If you look at the development of countries that were free, who got freedom earlier than us, developed earlier than us. So what we can do is either wait to develop, or we can actively drive development in the economy. Same case with women in companies. You can either wait for women to come into manufacturing and tech, or you can actively drive and facilitate that entry as a company. And so, of course, it would take time, I understand that, but throughout this conversation, one of the things we've learned from Harshita is that policy can drive a lot of impact in this particular field. And so it's not just for women to sort of sit and wait and just wait, there'll be one day when I'll work in a factory. No, there has to be an environment that welcomes the woman, does not prejudice or discriminate against her when she does. And that brings me to my next question. Do you, ladies, in your career have experienced, and Ankita shared with us that she did when she was starting out, a little bit of bias and prejudice against the production role. I want to ask the others, have you experienced any discrimination, any subtle bias acting out in your careers? And if not yourselves, do you know about colleagues who have? What do you think? Have you heard them speak about it? What do you think prevents women from talking about it? These days, we get a lot of news about women talking about discrimination and cases and harassment that happened with them 20 years ago. And then the question becomes about validity. Do we believe her or not? Why is she talking now? I just want to understand what you think about it, what your experience has been in that space.
So, I mean, I don't have specific stories, but just experiences that I have seen, where women are pushed back once they return from maternity leave, purely because, you have someone else to fill in that position, and redundancy was created, for the woman employee while she was gone. So, I mean, these are things which just naturally have happened, and it is bias in a way, right? Because when she comes back, suddenly there is she's clamoring for finding something else because maybe that earlier profile now did not need her. So my point is, if you value the employee before she left and you value the skill set, then she needs to be considered in any role, or you just had to create it for an interim position, and those opportunities have to be made available by that company. But lots of women don't talk about it because I think most of it you almost expect it to happen. So I'll give you my own example, okay? And it's not one of discrimination, but quite the opposite. I was actually 3 months pregnant when I switched jobs. Okay, I didn't know when I accepted the offer, and my first reaction was I'll just decline the offer. And I called up my boss like, this has happened, and I will take back my job offer. I'll go back. And he's like, what? You thought we would not take you because you were pregnant? What kind of a company do you think you're joining? So it's a life event. I'm happy for you. Come on board, and we'll figure out who'll fill in your shoes in 6 months. So I mean, what if I didn't talk about it then, and just kind of said, okay, I don't want to take on this offer for whatever reason. So I would never have this experience behind my belt. I think a lot of apprehension, hesitation is also in our minds. and that needs to go away too. So yeah, that would be just one example of discrimination or the lack of it.
Yeah. So again, I have not faced myself personally any discrimination, but talking about the maternity piece again, when we are say calibrating or having appraisal discussions for that matter, say a woman has worked for in that 12 months period, if she's contributed for say 8 months or 7 months, the default discussion even today in the organizations or in the team members that are calibrating that individual is, let's give it a B and close that discussion, because it's a maternity case. That's all is the discussion there. Ideally it should be out of that 8 months, what has been the value addition, what has been the contribution, not being treated as a default case. It still gets treated like that. If A is the highest grade that has to be allocated, she has to be 8 months should be taken as the is equal to 12 months. That should be the benchmark that they should do. But that doesn't happen even now. It's just closed as a maternity case, and it should be a default B rating. I'm just glad that it's not C, because she did not contribute the entire year. But still there's headroom for growth, I would say. And also women don't fight back. They don't really say that, okay, see, you have to count me only for 8 months and see the value addition that I brought in there. They just accept that, okay, I was on a maternity break, so I'm happy with a B rating. So I would always say it's both sides. The organizations treating it differently, also women fighting back. It's always a two-way street. So that's something that I think there should still be a large change that is expected out of both the parties.
Thanks for that answer. And I also want to quickly ask you one question we have from the audience. Amit is asking, in today's corporate world, why is there so much of a hype for MBA? And again, I think this is a question that Harshita will answer best, but let me just read it out for you all. Why is there so much of a hype for an MBA while considering someone for an initial manager role? Really, MBA needed for retail banking, where sale is all about loan and cards. Same with FMCG. Why this hype for the MBA?
So, Oshin, as I said, I'm not one of those who sort of thinks it's the most important thing. I think experience is what is most important. Your aptitude for a job is most important, right? Your passion for the job is most important. Not denying the fact that doing a master's or an MBA brings out the extra, as we call it, the people skills or the soft skills, and the exposure that you get over there prepares you a little better for managerial roles. I'm not going to take that point away. But I have worked in organizations, I belong to organizations which always give a lot of respect to experience. And I think if you're making a choice of an organization, join an organization which respects your experience and aptitude. And there'll be many to do that. So from my point of view, the reason that an MBA may be preferred is because the exposure to soft skills, people skills, managerial ability comes as part of the curricula that we go through in our education over there, right? That's the only difference. But experience for me has always been the bigger aspect, and aptitude and passion for the job. That's what I would say.
Thanks so much for that answer. And now the final one for you all. What are some things, and you could give me pointers, 1, 2, 3, however you find best. What are some things that you have learned throughout the years, and you think every single woman entering the corporate world must know before she starts working?
Okay, I'll go for this. I think I can think of 3 points when you ask this question. The first one being a strong support system, be it in the form of family or friends or just your spouse also is enough. I think that support system is very, very important for women to really grow and thrive in the corporate industry, corporate world. The second point that I could think of is apart from just having mentors and people who can guide you in the corporate world, I think you should also have sponsors for you. You should have people speaking up for you. You should have people defending you when you're not around. In my personal experience, I've had some stakeholders in the initial years of my career going and telling my boss that, okay, I don't want to work with this woman. She doesn't know anything, things like that. A lot of things. But my boss stood up there and he said, she's the best who can do this job for you, and she'll be there for you. You can't come and talk to me. He can always I mean, the stakeholder can always bypass me and go and talk to my boss, but my boss, again, who's a guy, who's not a female leader, but he was a sponsor for me there. I think women should have more sponsors for her in the corporate world to really back her up when she's not around, you know. And the third point is, if you're looking at really growing or see yourself developing in sales as a career field, get ready to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. So you will be thrown into situations where you are totally unprepared. You don't know how to react or behave or talk in that situation, but that's how ruthless it's going to be. And you have to be mentally prepared to face that and take it in a more optimistic way, that it's going to be giving you a lot of exposure and learning. You know, that's going to help throughout your career journey. The first few years of foundational learning is going to stay with you forever. So those are the 3 points that I could think of listening to your question.
Definitely. Thanks so much for it. I want to move to Ankita next. Ankita, what would you say?
I would actually just say that I think one of the first things that comes to my mind is the fact that as women, we tend to often be okay with having to share our light and be okay to share credit. And if it's a team effort, all of that kind of comes natural to us because that's something that we possess. But I really feel as women who are stepping into the corporate world, I think it's very important to know when to call for your spotlight back. I think it's very important to ask for it back when you know that this is on you. Because I think more often than not, men are very vocal in terms of asking for credit, in terms of things that has been brought to the table by them. And which is great in its own way. I mean, if you've contributed to something magnanimously, why shouldn't you, right? But as women, we're always open to like sharing that light with people, but often that tends to kind of dim your light eventually. So I think it's very important to occasionally just get that right back. So that's just one of the things that for me at least is critical at all points of time. Yeah.
Definitely. Harshita, how about you? What would you say?
So 2-3 things. I think one is just don't let nobody tell you what you can do, cannot do, should not do, you know, including and you know, just be very, very kind to yourself. To Ankita's point, just be kind enough to get your credit. You know, it's yours to get, right? So that's the most important thing. Second thing is call out a bias if you see it, right? Just call it out. Because I think a lot of times we just let it be, and because it's okay and you know we have to live with it, don't let that happen. Okay, call it out, right? The third thing would be ask for support. Ask for that support which will make you thrive. Ask for that support that you need to be successful, right? And look for mentors and networks. Okay, let there be people, as Anusha said, you can learn from, who can stand for you. Okay, they don't need to sympathize with you, right? But who can stand with you, share the right story so that you can be successful and learn from them. And reach out to women, create your networks. Men are very good at creating networks, right? And it's a good thing. I always say, see, workplace was traditionally designed for the majority, right? And they have sort of learned the tricks of the trade more than us, right? No harm learning from them, right? So whether it's credit, whether it's negotiation, whether it's, you know, getting more money, whether it's building networks, all of that, those are the tricks of the trade. So let's learn from them, right? And of course, create your own networks and mentors, women who've done it and all that. And the last thing is that if you're able to sort of, I'm sure all of us are going to be extremely successful and are successful, and our tribe will be successful as we go forward. I think we also have to enhance someone else. So we have to be an enhancer for someone else, right? If it's happened to us, we have stories, we've been able to crack it to an extent, we need to help someone else do it. Not help, but it's our responsibility, right? Because it's a very few who are coming in, right? So, you know, so we need to make sure of that and be an enhancer for your organization, to tell them what they need to do for us to be successful.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that answer. And now finally, Tanya, from finance and banking and tech, what are the things every woman entering your domain must know before she enters?
Yeah, I mean, again, a few things. Number one, learn to let go of a passive attitude, okay, and make your own way. And I always remember this Ayn Rand quote. Yeah, the question isn't who's going to let me, but it's who's going to stop me. So keep that, keep that independence in your career development. Yes, mentor, sponsors, very important, but having that independence lets you control your destiny. What if you want to start out on your own in the future? So don't have a passive attitude when it comes to your career. Number two, I think, and all of us are, some of us are homemakers here as well. Don't forget your roles besides work as well, right? And again, drawing in from another quote in technology, if you're working 24/7, where are you going to get all the interesting ideas from? So you need to have a life outside work. Don't forget those roles. The third thing, which again, I think, which we women are really good at, one is we need to draw on sociability. I think a lot of times there are conflicts in organizations because you just don't want to communicate. There's stubbornness, there's inability to compromise. And I think women can maintain a certain amount of grace under pressure. And that's really invaluable in any type of conflict. So it's, I mean, why wouldn't you want to have a collaborative spirit than, someone who says my way or highway? So I think that's another thing that we all should draw on. It's our strength and we should make the most of it. And finally, because again, this is a fast-paced and changing world of fintech, embrace the unknown. If you don't adapt to changing tides, if you don't try to do new things, you don't maintain an enthusiasm of discovering things, you'll find it very hard to establish your place in a very competitive environment. So even now, the presence of leadership of women in tech is not that known a concept. So if you don't have it in you to keep wanting to know more and wanting to discover the unknowns, you will always remain at a certain level and not move to the next one. So yeah, embracing the unknown would be my last tidbit.
Definitely. Thank you so much for this conversation. Let me ask you, did you have fun?
Yeah, we did.
I did, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this conversation was part of this campaign we're running. And the idea is simply I'll tell you, what comes to your mind when you think of an investment banker? I asked this question to 10 of my colleagues. 9 of them imagined a male in a suit. And I thought that this is the problem, and this is why we need this session. This is what we're doing at Inside IIM. We have a Women's Month, and we have a campaign that's called She Inspires Me. The idea is simple. She can, she has been, and she will do as much, even better than a he. That's as simple as that. So just to bring that out, we invited you all to have this conversation. Thank you so much for making the time. And at this point, I want to encourage the audience, go to the description box, check out the link in the description, go to that LinkedIn link and nominate the women who inspire you. And if you can't think of any from your network, just understand how deep the problem is. Because when I started thinking about it, everybody that I was thinking was a man. And I thought, man, we need to do something about this. So the idea is simple. Whoever you can think of as a working professional, a woman professional, nominate her. And we want to bring those voices out actively on the Inside IIM channel. That's the simple idea behind She Inspires Me. If you like our initiative, this conversation, the work we do, please drop in a like and a comment. It means a lot to us. Check out Council. If you're someone who wants mentorship from people like Tanya and Harshita, thank you so much for joining in. Anusha and Ankita, it's been a lovely conversation and just wonderful having you women. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having us.
Had a
Thank
great
you.
time. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.